This evening's a bit different to the ways we normally do these little talks. Usually it's a single presenter. Tonight it's two presenters. And the other thing that's a bit different is we're going to talk about our own birds as opposed to birds in general, or any animal in general. It's our data that we've collected for the Fourpies area. So that's, I think, the first for us tonight. So Paul is going to kick us off. I'm sure some of you will have seen Paul before at our events. Paul's a local ecologist with a real passion that is quite infectious, and a lot of my enthusiasm comes from Paul. But he's always very willing to lend a hand and to contribute and to answer questions and all these sorts of things that really are important when you're trying to promote and encourage people to engage with nature. So without further ado, Paul, over to you.
Thank you. Hello. For those who haven't met me, my name is Paul Ritchie, and I feel a bit of a fraud because I'm not actually an ecologist by training. I'm actually a zoologist, and I chose that course as an 18-year-old because plants are boring and animals are interesting. As I've grown older, I've realised that's not strictly true, and in fact animals are really hard to catch and survey, and plants are great because they stay still. So my views changed over the years. So I want to start really. I need my glasses, hang on. There was a time when I didn't. I want to start really with a brief introduction about how I got involved in birds, because I think it's important from the perspective of what more normal would like to achieve, which is to encourage more people to get involved in surveying. And I also want to show that it's not that hard. We can learn it, so I don't know many of you about your background in interest in birds and what we know about birds, so I want to show you how we've set about doing a survey. Surveying is not that hard either. And I also want to touch a little bit on the link between nature and science and art, because I do a lot of artwork, and I know, looking at the audience, there's some members of our art club that are in the audience, and we've been studying birds and sketching birds, so I just want to touch on that as well. It's not a long presentation, and it'd probably be easier if we do questions at the end, but there is a bit where I'm going to ask you to get involved. I'll find out how much you do know about birds. So, when I was 18, I thought I was going to go into art. That was what my passion was, but I didn't for a variety of reasons. I ended up going to science, and I decided that biology was my favourite subject. And as I said, I thought plants were boring and animals were interesting, so I went off to Nottingham to study biology. And that's carried on all the way through. Mainly my career was as a countryside ranger. I was a head ranger when I retired with the City of London Corporation at Ashton Common in Surrey. And I carried on after that with a small company offering, amongst other things, some ecological advice. And this is a picture of me at Wisley. Did a lot of work with Wisley on helping them naturalise, or be wild in a way, some of the areas like their orchards and stuff. But my journey into wildlife really started at this place. Does anyone recognise where this is? Just out of interest. It's Tring Museum. Tring Museum was a private museum originally, and is part of the Natural History Museum now. And my father used to take the four of us to Tring Museum regularly. And whilst my brothers would run around the museum looking at stuffed animals, some of them badly stuffed, really badly stuffed, I used to get up to this. I used to spend hours and hours looking at the trays that were on the mezzanine floor, looking at insects. So when I went off to Nottingham, I chose zoology, and fundamentally I went there to study insects. And that has carried on. My interest in insects has carried on. It's primary reason why I do what I do when I get involved in these activities is my passion for insects. I've learned and I've developed an interest in trees and wildflowers, but fundamentally that interest came from those plants hosting, either with homes or shelter or food, insects that I was interested in. But all the way through my childhood and all the way through university and my working life, I was interested in birds, and I used to bird watch from an early age, and that translated into interest in my art as well, and the fact that I used to constantly draw birds as a young child and as a young man. Moving forward to now, we live on the boundary of Betchworth and Brockham Parish, next to the Greensands Way. If you walk that way regularly, we're the house with a blue shed and solar panels on the roof. I mention that because we're doing open gardens again this year. So if anyone's interested in wildlife gardening, gardening for biodiversity, the first weekend in June we'll be having an open garden. And this is our garden. It's not a traditional garden. It's more of a nature reserve really. Fundamentally it's a woodland glade. And I'll come back to that because that's really important to what we're talking about today. But Claire and I decided in 2010 that we would turn our garden over to making space for nature and wildlife for four main reasons. One was for wildflowers. We look around at the farmland around where we live and we see it ploughed, harrowed and sprayed every year, and most of the wildflowers are killed as weeds and treated as weeds. So we wanted to create a refuge for wildflowers. We also wanted to ensure that the soil wasn't polluted in any way, so we're organic gardeners because the other organism we wanted to support were fungi. Does anyone know what that one is? Stinkhorn, yeah. So, that's an interesting one. The reason I like this fungi is because again it's linked to insects. It smells of rotting flesh and it attracts flies. The flies go on the head and they pick up the spores of fungus and they spread them. So again, that's another organism. Insects, yeah. And I always call out for flies because flies get bad rep, really, bad press. How can you not fall in love with an insect that's so colourful, beautiful? And then finally, of course, birds. We'll get rid of that, sorry. I'm going to get rid of this irritating little dots down here. There. Do you all know what that bird is?
Goldfinch.
Goldfinch, yeah. So the reason that slide's in there is because being organic gardeners and gardening for biodiversity, we don't deadhead anything until the new spring. And because of that, we get flocks of goldfinch through the garden feeding on knapweed seeds, and quite large numbers at times. So we also get involved in citizen science projects, which is really what we're talking about here with what Norman's talking about with 4Bs and some of the work we do. So I've been involved in that all through my working life and now since I've retired and the role I do. So the left-hand picture is me. It was when I was running a course on newts up at Narwood, Surrey Wildlife Trust site. Great crested newts, they've got large populations there and smooth newts. So we run those. The picture that's at the top there, that's working with, well, I must have called Brockham School, it's not called Brockham School anymore, is it? North Downs School. So that's working with their year 4, is it year 4s? Year 5s, I think, doing wildflower surveys in our garden, but also in other areas as well. We get involved in a number of projects, Nature's Calendar, Big Butterfly Count, Bee Walks, Bug Life, Big Garden Bird Watches, but also Plant Rights, No May, and promoting wildflowers. I've done a lot of work with Kew Gardens and their Grow Wild project, encouraging people to grow wildflowers for insects and for wider benefits. Butterfly surveys. I used to do butterfly transects when I was a ranger, and I still do them in the garden now. Bird surveys, anyone know what that one is?
Can't see. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great spotted woodpecker on our bird feeder. And amphibians. SARG, the Surrey Amphibian and Reptile Group, we record for them as well. So they're smooth newts that are in our pond at home. As I said, work with great crested newts and toads and frogs. As I said, I'm lifelong interest in birds. This is probably my favourite photograph I've ever taken of any bird, really. It came out so well, it looks almost like a painting, so I'm pleased with it. They're really difficult to photograph sometimes. Anyone know what that one is?
Waxwing.
X-wing.
Go on, sorry, I missed it.
Waxwing.
Yeah. So, and also sculpture. So this is a raven sculpture that my father-in-law made us for a wedding present, which is in the garden. So I'm really into art and sculpture. And again, as I say, I used to draw birds as part of my hobby, which I still do. We are running at the moment a project in Dorking with Moore Valley District Council on nature journaling. And you may say, what's the relevance of this? Well, part of what we were doing was sketching birds. So these aren't my drawings. So I was teaching members on the course to learn how to sketch birds and record birds in the garden. It's another way of connecting people to nature. It's another way of getting people involved in monitoring things like birds and insects. And in doing so, then collect information and record it. So that's the link between art and science, really. And that's how I make the connection with people and try and motivate people who perhaps wouldn't get involved or don't feel instantly inclined to come out into countryside to help get involved in recording things. So how's the survey gone? So I started surveying wildlife in detail again during lockdown. Basically I was trapped at home. After about 4 days my wife was completely frustrated with me and said go and do something. So I started recording, and I started recording in the garden, and this year for the first time I've taken it outside and created a survey route that consists of 4 main sessions. And this is a walking and sitting survey. So 3 of the routes I do I have to walk on them. It's when I'm walking the dog. So that's really important because I wanted to find a way of surveying that I could share with everyone on 4Bs that doesn't give you an extra thing to do. What I've learned over the years doing surveys, and I'm doing community surveys, is people sometimes find it hard to find the space for time. And for me, it was about making sure, and I have to walk the dog every day. So something I do anyway, so I picked routes that I already walk with my dog. The sitting survey with birds through the garden, when I can go down early in the morning when everyone else is not fully awake. They don't like my chatty early morning demeanour that I have, so I get banished out of the house. So I go down at the end and I sit down there with my breakfast and my coffee and record the birds. And then come back and tell them all about it. My wife has renamed Merlin Appers birds Tourette's because they keep just spouting bird species at them whenever I spot them. So this is the survey area, which you'll recognise. So I live where it says garden. That block there, that's my garden. I live in Nutwood Avenue. The hedgerow on the side of our garden, on the east side of our garden, on the right-hand side of where that red blob is an old manorial and parish boundary between Brockham and Betchworth. And I do a walk that goes along the footpath up to the churchyard and cemetery, which I call the farmland one. I walk round the cemetery, back along the path to home, which I call the spinney. It's like a little woodland that you find on farmland here. And then the riparian one is the walk from our back garden down across the river to Brockham Green, and then I have my garden. So they're the 4 main routes I do. Anyone shout out to me any countryside sort of landscapey feature that jumps out at you straight away, looking at that picture?
Huge fields.
Fields, there's a lot of fields, yeah. The fields are mainly the brown, black, dark spaces with not much on them. What else?
Paths, walkways.
Yeah, there's paths, there's a lot of paths across it, so it's quite handy for doing surveys. What about natural features? There's a river, yeah. Anything else? Trees, yeah. Anything about the trees around here? They're big and old. There's a lot of big old ones, mainly oak, but there are others as well. The other thing that doesn't stand out, but is there, we'll talk about, the key feature, are hedgerows. And a lot of over-mature hedgerows. So that's quite important when we come to look at the birds that we've recorded. So they're the key habitats from my perspective as a land manager who used to manage sites, nature reserves. The key areas for me are wood pasture, which is the bit where the farmer grazes his cattle. So you've got open grass and mature hedgerows and mature trees. So that's what I call wood pasture. Lots of old trees, lots of old hedgerows, and most importantly, really dense scrub. Blackthorn, hawthorn, young trees, elder, various other ones. So that habitat is probably the most important one in our area. And that extends up onto the Downs where Norman's been doing his recording, where the scrub is very particular, and it's chalk and grassland scrub, which is slightly different. How do I record them? Well, it's sightings and hearing. All my life, I've birdwatched with binoculars. And then more recently, someone persuaded me to use the Merlin app. And just out of interest, how many people use Merlin in the room? Everyone. Brilliant. They'll be really pleased. How many people use every aspect? Well, no, don't know that. How many people use the recording, the sound aspect of Merlin? How many people use the photo ID aspect? How many people record their data and share it with the Merlin, with the university that formed Merlin app? There you go, that's where I want to go. So that's something we should think about, because this system was developed by a university in America. They collate international data on birds. So we can go out and record birds, which is interesting and fun, and we can get to see birds, but if we're not sharing that data, it's wasted from the point of view of ecological terms for managing, it's wasted from the point of view of securing funding for groups like eBetchworth. So have a look at it. If you get a chance, go into the app and have a look, because there are these other facilities there. So the way I do that, I use the Merlin app, I do that, but I also then record the data on the spreadsheet. Because it's easy to communicate. It's much easier for me to communicate and share. So I do a blog for Norman, and I share the spreadsheet of the data, and those are the birds. So I'm up to about 50 species now across the 4 walks, and I record them each week. I go out each week, I walk all those routes. I try and do them at least a couple of times each, sometimes I do a bit more. I record for the 10-minute slot, and only the 10-minute slot. Because although we're not recording numbers, when you're doing science projects, you try and reduce the amount of variables. So I try and stick to the 10-minute slot, so I'm recording 10 minutes in each of those. I found the app really helpful. So I've been birding a long time. I didn't know there were firecrests in the Spinney, because I'd never seen them. And the sound, if you've ever listened to this really, really quiet sound. I only discovered that because I had the Merlin app. So it's a really useful tool. That's how else I do it as well. So I still use binoculars. I still like to see the things. When I'm sitting in the garden particularly, I like to try and find the birds I'm recording, because I can never be totally sure that they're in the garden and they're not on the river habitat or on the farmland. And if you use Merlin, it's really sensitive. I'm surprised how sensitive it is. It picks up birds along the way. I can walk along the path by the chestnut trees and it will pick up skylarks up by the post office, which is quite surprising to me. So you can't always be sure where they are coming from. So, as a result of these surveys, my surveys, not Norman's but mine, but he'll talk to his, so there's some similarity. Songbirds, there's a number of key songbirds that appear in all 4 of my route, all 4 of my areas. So the farmland, the Spinney, the riparian one in my garden. So going top left to right, what have we got? A wren, yes, a common wren. Next one. Dunnock, yes. Next one. Robin. The one on the right, top right. House sparrow. Yeah, now if you read the books or read the journals or anything, they'll tell you house sparrows are rare at the moment. If you live in Brockham or Betchworth, there's loads of them. So why is that? We'll come back to that. So we've also got then a series of group of thrushes that are recorded. So the one on the bottom left, blackbird. The one on the right of that, song thrush, yeah. We also record missile thrush. We get fieldfare at certain time of the year and redwing. So we did quite well for thrushes. I love this photo. What we got there? Left hand side, great tit, yeah. Right hand side, blue tit, yeah. What other tits do we get in the area?
Long-tailed.
Sorry?
Long-tailed.
Long-tailed, yeah. They come through in flocks. Two more. Coal tits, yeah, they'll come in the night. There's one more on the riparian one I find. Marsh tit, yeah. And these are all songbirds. Do you know why they're called songbirds? They sing a song. Not all birds sing a song. So some of the birds I'll show you, they have calls, and Merlin will pick up the call and recognise the call. And in fact, songbirds will have calls. So they'll have warning calls. The wren is the most noticeable. But it also has a song. And the songs are melodic, and some of them are repeatable, some of them are quite varied, but they use those to maintain and establish their territories and communicate with other members of their species. This bird has a call and not a song. What's that?
Great spotted
It's a great spotted woodpecker. We also get green woodpecker. Great spotted woodpecker is the one you'll hear knocking as well. So the Merlin will pick up the knocking and record it. Not just the calls, it will record the calls, but it will. Whereas the green woodpecker is tending to pick up the calls, so you'll often hear when it's flying. We get both in the garden because we have anthills in our garden because we don't mow the lawns. And green woodpecker feeds on the ants. We get other regulars as well that appear across the top left. Wood pigeon, yeah, and we get stock dove and collared dove as well. Next one, magpie. Next one, jackdaw. Yeah, I mean, I would say jackdaws. I don't know about Betchworth, but in Brockham, jackdaw's got to be our iconic bird. It's everywhere. Huge, great flocks. They go around. The one on the right,
carrion crow.
Carrion crow, and we also have recorded rook, but not so regularly. What about this chap? Pheasant. Parakeet.
Canada
Goose. What's the link between those three? They're all non-native species. They're introduced species. So I record those on my survey separately on a table, on the same table, but underneath, because they're not native species. They're all been introduced. You could argue that they've been naturalised. But there are issues for me as a zoologist. The pheasant is a plague. It eats everything. Slowworms, frogs, newts, insects, mice. Absolute disaster. They're worse than chickens. Parakeets, what would be my problem with parakeets? Well, noise, yeah. I don't mind so much the noise. The problem I've got with parakeets is they're aggressive nest holders. They nest in holes and they drive other birds out. The only birds that I see that seem to take them on are woodpeckers, who tend to be top of the chain when it comes to occupying holes. Jackdaws won't tolerate them either in the feeder. Magpies give way to them, ironically. And Canada geese, they're everywhere. And they basically poo in every water where we've got, and they create high nitrogen levels. So they're all non-native species, but as I say, they are considered broadly naturalised. And then last but not least, the ones I find really interesting and I love is we do really, really well for warblers. So I'm going to try and see if I can remember what these are now. So left-hand side, top, black cap, yeah. Next one.
Garden warbler.
Yes. Next one. The slightly
Lesser
yellow one.
white throat.
No, the one on the right, the next one along is a willow warbler.
Willow warbler.
The far right
Willow warbler.
is chiff chaff. Bottom left, someone said it already.
White throat.
Yeah, which one? Someone
Lesser
said-
white
Lesser
throat.
white throat, thank you. We also get the greater white throat, the other one as well. RSPB consider these as allies or link them in their guides to warblers. So what's that one?
Goldcrest.
Goldcrest, yeah. And that one?
Firecrest.
Firecrest, and we get both those. So Firecrest, I mainly record, I have recorded it in the riparian, but I mainly record it in the spinney. It seems to like the conifers that are in the grounds of the big house, and in that little woodland there. The Goldcrest is more in our garden, we do find it in the garden. Who's the enemy? Who's the enemy? Apart from sparrowhawk, which we do get, the sparrowhawk will take all birds. So this has just arrived from Africa, followed the willow, the warblers by literally 2 days. What's that? Cuckoo, yeah.
Cuckoo.
So, and the cuckoo lays its eggs in mainly warblers, not only warblers, but mainly warblers nests, and it displaces obviously their eggs in the process. The reason I've included warblers, not only because I like them, I love hearing the sounds, is because they are a key indicator of a particular habitat that I've already mentioned. Anyone has to guess which one it was?
Hedgerows.
Yeah, well, it is hedgerows, but mainly the dense scrub. And this is the one that often gets overlooked and the one I want to labour as a point, because wherever there's dense scrub in our Thornby area, if we can, we want to try and keep it. Because warblers, things like nightingale, favour this habitat, and it's the one that normally gets cut down or cleared. We're lucky because the land behind our house, the landowners currently don't want to manage it or don't appear to want to overly manage it, and therefore it's really dense scrub. It's blackthorn, hawthorn, sallows, so goat willow and grey willow, which is perfect habitat for these birds. That's me done. Any questions before I hand over?